What's going on, guys? Marco here with Front Yard Fantasy, and I am bringing you 4 players to stash in your Dynasty leagues. All right, guys, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Front Yard Fantasy. It's wherever you're watching this right now. We are making a push here. We want to get to 5,000 subs as fast as possible, and we are so pumped to bring you content that you are going to win your leagues with, help you out each and every week. We are pumping out tons and tons of content each week on top of course, the staple of Front Yard Fantasy, our daily game show. All right, guys, so let's jump into it. My number one player that I think you should be stashing in Dynasty Leagues, and I think he could even bring you value as early as 2022, it's wide receiver for the Houston Texans, Nico Collins. Now, let's talk about some of the situational stuff here first. So, Nico Collins, he was drafted last year, inconsistent a little bit, but he has, he's the big-bodied guy that really fits the physical, aggressive play style that complements Brandon Cooks really well. So he could be a nice wide receiver too for the Houston Texans. Obviously, John Mechie was drafted to this team. If you've watched any of my content, you follow me on Twitter at Marco_14P, you know that truly, John Mechie is one of my absolute favorite targets, or was absolutely one of my favorite targets at the wide receiver position of this rookie class. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with cancer. The good news is it's the most treatable form of cancer is what was being reported. We're hoping that we get him back on the field in the next year or two. But until then, Nico Collins is a guy who can step into the wide receiver 2 role for this team and make an immediate impact, in between the 20s, but of course in the red zone because he is a big target. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. He's, like I said, he's really aggressive at the catch point. He's improving as a route runner. His release package could use a little bit of cleaning up, but it's something that he's been working on. All reports out of camp is that he has truly developed into the number 2 option of the pass catchers for this team, and that's something you love to hear from a developing young wide receiver. He's a guy who had a ton of potential, but he was a little bit of a raw prospect, so coming into the NFL, it was always going to take him a little bit of time. Matt Harmon has even compared him to kind of T. Higgins ultra light, and I think that's a perfect comp. Nico Collins is one of those guys who maybe doesn't have the athletic skill set of a T. Higgins, but he does a lot of the other things really well, and it helps that he plays even bigger than he is at that 6'4", 215 pounds. He is one of those guys who Davis Mills could be relying on in the red zone. Davis Mills, the quarterback for the Houston Texans, is another young player who I believe is going to be the next Kirk Cousins. I know you hear that a lot, but he truly is one of the most talented young quarterbacks in the league, even though he isn't that exciting name that you're typically hearing in fantasy circles. So because of that, because I believe in Davis Mills, I believe in where the Texans are starting to go, Nico Collins is a really nice stash in your Dynasty leagues. He was averaging 6.1 targets per game in his final 5 games on the season. If you extrapolate that over a 17-game season, that's 100 plus targets on the season, and he could be in line for a little bit more than that even heading into 2022 and beyond. So let's put him on the end of your bench. Let's put him on your taxi squad if you have an extended taxi squad, because right now, even in redraft leagues, he's going as in like the 17th round. So he's essentially free because most redraft leagues don't even go that deep. So if you can go ahead and do that now for your Dynasty leagues, you could get ahead of a big breakout that could have him filling a really solid flex role for you. And if you are a smart fantasy football player, odds are you're putting the wide receiver position in your flex. And Nico Collins, if he does have a breakout season this year, or even take a big step, he could be a nice piece to your offense, a nice piece to your lineup that helps you win, even if he isn't the key leader for your fantasy football team. All right, let's keep it with the wide receivers. My next guy I want to talk about is a guy who's actually gotten a decent amount of hype out of camp. Even last season he was getting hype, and it's Josh Palmer, wide receiver for the LA Chargers. He's 6'1", he's 210, and there's a lot of really nice traits to Josh Palmer's game. He's a proficient route runner. His release package is versatile, even though, he plays out of the slots a lot of the time, so he doesn't even need that versatile of a release package. He's a physical player for his 6'1", 210 size, and in the games where he played over 60% of the snaps, he averaged 15.8 fantasy points per game. And in those games, he averaged 7.3 targets per game. All the reports out of camp are that he's locked down that third wide receiver role for this team, so he's going to be on the field at least 60% of the time because of what this offense typically does, how they line up, typically what formations they run out of for their offense. He's got a prolific young quarterback in Justin Herbert, who is the number 2, 3 at the worst young quarterback in the NFL, especially in fantasy football circles. And he is someone who can immediately fill in if Keenan Allen were to go down, if Mike Williams were to go down. I see Josh Palmer really as a threat potentially to Keenan Allen's volume in 2022 and beyond, because he does a lot of the things Keenan Allen does. Not quite as good. He's not as football savvy. He's not as good of a route runner. He's not as efficient as a Keenan Allen, but he fits that kind of wide receiver mold. And I think he's a guy who you can, again, similar to Nico Collins, throw at the end of your bench. If you have an extended taxi squad, throw him on your taxi squad, because 2022, he could take a nice step. I don't think he's likely to contribute, not even as much as Nico Collins maybe in 2022, but he could be a guy who's set up really nicely to take an enormous step of volume and talent and production in 2023, because we know that Keenan Allen is getting up there in age. He's 30, going to be in age 31 season soon, and Mike Williams is also up there in age. So Josh Palmer is a guy who could be set up nicely to, at the very least, be on the field often in 2022, and even beyond that, get on the field more and more and more, and potentially be a guy who you can rely on as, a high-end wide receiver 3, a flex down the road. And like I said with Nico Collins, they might not be the most exciting players on your team, but they're still the players that are going to help you win weeks as you approach your fantasy playoffs and your championships. All right, so I've got one more wide receiver, and then I've got a tight end for you. So I'm going to mix it up here. I'm going to go tight end next, and I'm going to talk about a guy who is definitely post-hype. Everyone thought he was going to be the big deal last year, and even before that, there was tons of hype about Jonnu Smith. Now, here's what I'll say. He's a deep stash. He's free in redraft leagues. In dynasty leagues, you could acquire him for essentially nothing, and I'm okay going out and acquiring him. Go trade a 2023 and a 2024 third and see if you can get Jonnu Smith, because we've seen the flashes from Jonnu Smith when he's healthy. We've seen what he can do athletically and physically on the football field. He was late to the Patriots offseason program last year, and it was obviously due to injury, and the Patriot system has been historically and notoriously known to be a difficult system for young players to grasp, or players who join this team. It takes them a little bit to catch on. Now it's likely to be that he is more involved in this offense. He is more involved in the offseason program, and all of the reports out of camp are that he is catching passes all over the field, out of the backfield, lined up in the slot, lined up from the tight end spot. And so he is essentially free, and he could be one of those guys who just the offense adapts and evolves, and we see Jonnu Smith used in a role that is really, really profitable for your fantasy football leagues and for your fantasy football teams. And we could look back on this season and say, man, who's going to be the guy who fills the Jonnu Smith role now? And I'm not saying that's the most likely outcome, but I think it's definitely possible when you look at the real weapons as the options for the New England Patriots. There's none that are overly exciting, and I think Jonnu Smith is definitely talented enough physically to force his hand and force the ball, or force Mac Jones to get him the ball. So I like Jonnu Smith as a very deep stash in your dynasty leagues. All right, the last one is an even deeper stash. It's a guy that not a ton of people know about unless you're really plugged into, the NFL draft, into rookies, into, Devy leagues, or breaking down college prospects, or even in really deep into, fantasy football Twitter. And that is Kyle Phillips. Kyle Phillips is one of those guys. First of all, I'll say he's a rookie wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans. He's one of those guys who his route running is his calling card. He was out of UCLA, and he was very productive for them. And like I said, like I've said in previous videos, when you are looking for guys who can bring sneaky value, especially at the wide receiver position, that can get on the field earlier than you might expect, it's the guys who don't make the dumb mistakes, the guys who have a high football IQ, the guys especially who are route technicians who can make their quarterbacks look good. Kyle Phillips is one of those guys. There's obviously things to note here. Derrick Henry is the number 1 option. He's probably the number 2 option. This isn't a pass-heavy offense. They have Robert Woods, who's now healthy. They have Treylon Burks, who they drafted very early. But Kyle Phillips is one of those guys who, if this offense struggles, if they have to kind of evolve with an aging Derrick Henry, what this offense is, and I think 2023 could be a major change in how they run their offense, Kyle Phillips could be a guy who is on the field early and often. I think he finds his way onto the field in 2022, but he's probably not going to be hyper fantasy productive. But if he does anything in 2022, you're going to want to make sure you have him deep on your taxi squad at the very end of your bench, because he is a guy who, like I said, his route running is something that can really be a masterclass of route running for a young wide receiver. And he is just a gritty, aggressive player. He's a guy you want on your team. And I think he's going to be a lock to make the Titans roster as probably their wide receiver 3, which might not seem appealing right now, but with an aging Robert Woods, a Treylon Burks, who I believe in, but has had some question marks, and Ryan Tannehill, maybe Malik Willis, and an aging Derrick Henry. There's a lot of things that could be evolving with this team. So he's a couple situations away from being on the field enough to produce for your fantasy teams. Like I said, he's a deep stash, but he's a stash I like. All right, don't forget, you can always find me on Twitter at Marco_14P. I'll answer any and all the fantasy football questions you got. Don't also forget to subscribe to the Front Yard Fantasy YouTube channel. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you next time. Be kind, do good. Peace.